Howdy. So I just finished Soldier King, and it was kind of a painful process, but I think overall I actually liked the game and would have liked it a lot more when I was young. I also said some things in the intro about the historicity, especially of the payment option. But to tell you the truth, after having played it, I think that it plays very, very well. That historical option, not option, but that historical factor of paying to use your troops. So while keeping your troops in the field in this time period, in this era, was far more expensive than campaigning, still, the campaigns tended to be these really slow, ponderous affairs. Big influxes of money might have changed that, but you're too poor to make big influxes of money if you have a good army, a large army. You're spending, either too much manpower or too much money. Well, probably too much of both, but if you have a lot of money, you can do quicker operations where you can drive someone out of the area and, more importantly perhaps, operate the sieges more rapidly. How much that actually factors into what was happening, I'm not sure. But the feel of that particular aspect is actually quite good, at least to me. There are other things in it that feel, and I've gone into how the alliances are structured, that feel like the game doesn't quite manage it as well. I think in this particular aspect, it did very well with something that may not be the most historical feature, just when you look at it from an intuitive point of view. It costs more to attack than to maintain your armies, by far, but in the game. But that prevents you from having both a large army and being able to accomplish a lot with it, which kind of feels a little right, even if for the wrong reasons. In terms, there are still those mechanical issues in the game itself. Counting on the map and counting all these little coins and all these little soldiers every year is really a hassle, especially solitaire. The map's not terribly attractive to me. It's better from a distance, but when you start looking at it, it looks kind of cartoony, which isn't terrible in and of itself, but it just doesn't bring the same pleasure that, say, looking at EU's map would. Other components, the player aid cards are kind of bland. They look like something, maybe out of 77 or something, The rules are an interesting factor. Now, these are going to be a big minus for some people because there are ambiguities in them. I didn't find any terrible contradictions, but there are definitely things left out of them. However, they're very easy to read and fairly easy to remember. Not terribly complex, not terribly long, only 16 pages. They're at the right level for me. The only thing that I dislike about it, it's hard to find things when you need to look something up. It's done too much in that prose style. Not divided into cases the way like SPI would be, for example. So it's hard to discover, once you learn something, if something's in a weird place, there are no cross-references or anything like that. Things aren't repeated a lot, in terms of, here's where to find the rule for this. There's a few places where there are, but in a lot of cases, I was left, in a couple of cases where there was something I didn't know what I was looking for precisely or where it was, I was left with an annoyance of trying to look. Cards, small, they're sturdy, but they fray quickly. They're not the modern playing card quality that you see in so many of the GMT games. The board, paper maps, Kind of cute in a Tom Wham-ish sort of way. I actually really like the counters. They're a little thin for some people, but I don't know. They remind me of my Azure Wish ones. So, anything that reminds me of AWE gets sort of a plus in my book. The box is a little thin for holding the cards. I should probably divide those cards into 2 piles. But once that's done, it's okay, I'm assuming. 2 piles is kind of tough in one baggie. Okay, so I had a few comments, and I may have hit some of them already about it. Let's look at what I had to say. Oh, yes, the economy. So this is the mechanical aspect of counting everything up. I would be tempted to create, if I were going to play this a good deal, to create some sort of player aids, maybe a small copy of the map with all the values listed on it, so that people can see what values are without having to lean over so much, especially playing the solitaire where I have to pay attention to everybody's economy. I found it very hard, much harder than bigger games like EU or like Empires and Arms in terms of counting things up. Empires and Arms and EU both give you a nice, here's how many points you're worth, now subtract what you're missing or something like that. They also give you little, in terms of EU, give you a nice sheet of paper to keep track of your economy. I think Empires and Arms may too. It's been a long time. And I'm not sure I would use that. I think I counted things otherwise. The control counters, yeah. A couple of points here. There aren't enough to begin with. You saw me kind of fudging with them, using upside down leaders, stuff like that. I used a 0 in one case. I had them sitting on roots to indicate it. Also, they all share the same background color. I think it would be helpful, because the background color in a way is the most obvious to people who are used to games with chits, to recognize things. I think it would be useful to have the background color representing the country more. All of them being burgundy didn't really help. And I guess that's about it. The only other thing I had was about the payments for attacking, which I actually think does work very well for this. Even though when I first saw it, it definitely felt like, what? Did they take like a World War II game and put it in here? Just because the cost seemed too high compared to the cost of the armies. I'm not saying it was free to conduct a campaign, but it was much, much cheaper, especially with the irregulars supporting the armies. Alright, so, overall view, and I think I've made some points about this already. If I saw this game 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I would have loved it. It was, at that point, what was 7 Years' War? Freddy the Great. I can't think of anything else. I cannot think of another strategic game that covered it. Still, this is the only, I saw another one, somebody pointed out another 7 Years' War game that came in a magazine. I'm kind of scared of the magazine games, but that was worldwide. But, there's no big entrance in the worldwide field. Clash of Monarchs is a very good game, but it's Europe, and not even all of Europe. 8 players. This holds 8 players. It also is not a war game in the sense that I could bring this to my old gaming group, people who would play things like Civilization, Pax Britannica, a number of other things. This would fit well in with that in a way that, Empires and Arms did not. There were a significant number of people in that group who would play Empires and Arms, but there were definitely people who just would outright be, no, I'm not doing that. WIF would certainly be a war game where this is on a different side of that line, right? I mean, the same people who played the Empires and Arms played the WIF. They would play just about any multiplayer war game. They try Europa Universalis and stuff like that. But this I could get my normal group of a combination of people who liked rail games, people who were role players, nuke war players, etc. But used to a decently long game. They would sit down and play this. It looks like it plays very fast comparatively in multiple players. My objections have more to do with the solitaire playability and a little historical Phillips, but I can put them aside. I mean, I think it's a good enough game that I don't mind that it's got some pretty serious historical inaccuracies or situations that don't feel right. Oh, about the rules, like I was saying, there's some ambiguities, some places where you kind of look and say, even if that's not covered, I want to fix that. And I got no problem with fixing rules, Then again, I'm usually teaching people my game. So I'll tell them, yeah, and here's a house rule I'm playing with. And if they really object, if they haven't played it but it sounds really wanky to them, that's fine. The only instances where I can remember playing games where it wasn't like that were things, in particular I can think of that with Empires in Arms, with where we were playing with groups that were outside our normal group, and we would sit there, and also there's we're going to be sitting down and playing this for months. Let's hash out the rules and make sure we all agree to it. Because if we played this for an evening and said, wow, that rule just didn't work, well, next time we play it in 2 years or whatever, maybe we put a note in and it's a different, we play with the rules under a different interpretation. Anyway, I think this shows a lot of promise. I would have played it a lot more solitaire as a younger person. Nowadays, one, I have so many damn games, but also I've grown a lot less, and maybe because I have so many, willing to play things that have too high a solo cost. So, Dune. I used to love playing Dune by myself. Well, I'm not going to do that very often. Yeah, I'll give you guys a view of it at some point. But I've got enough things that are just very, very good solitaire without that additional cost that I'm willing to kind of put this on the back burner for that. It doesn't have a high cost in terms of learning, in terms of teaching other people, so, I could well see getting a game of this going if I ever have a gaming group again of that quality. I think my next one up is going to be Twilight Imperium. And I know, one of my newest games, and so many things that I've, let everybody sit and vote on or whatever, and never got around to them. Well, something new comes, and it's also a huge box, which is an added incentive to get it cleared away. Also, I'm going to have my fiancé or whatever moving in with me in a couple of weeks, coming over from Europe, and that means I'm kind of in a chaos situation. I don't think I'm going to be using this table anymore. Sorry, I know you guys got used to my scratch, but I'm probably going to move to my white tables, which may not work so well for me. We'll see how whether I can kind of bolt them or put something on top of them or something. Anyway, this, certainly yesterday I had a lot of fun with this, and I had a little bit of fun at the end here. But so many of the turns, it was very, very fatiguing for me to get to because of the aspects, the counting and stuff like that. That just wasn't as easy as it is in some other games. It's not the numbers. The numbers aren't hard at all. It's the way they're represented on the board more than anything else. And the lack of player age to really capture them easily. All right, well, up this goes, I guess.